years for it to actually go live. Yay, we're live. Welcome to How to Human. Hi, Brandon.
Hello, how are you? How was your week?
This world, I tell you what, and we have Dr. Angie Stoehr with us, who's just gonna be here with us the whole time as we run our mouths. So be ready, Angie. I know you can run your mouth with the best of them because you and I have talked endlessly on my show.
I can keep up with anybody.
So just tell the viewers what you do, what you specialize in.
All right. Well, I'm an OBGYN. I specialize in pelvic and sexual pain disorders. And so I deal a lot with some of the things we're going to be talking about today, specifically the pelvic floor and stuff that causes issues with things like orgasm, etc.
Woohoo! We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the idea of a coregasm that they're trying to sell us on as if this is a thing. But we'll talk about how it could potentially be a thing a little bit later in the show. But how is everybody's weeks? How are things
going? What did she
going?
just do with her hands? I'm scared. You said coregasm, and she started doing this thing.
I hope this is the image. I hope that's
the orgasm image.
That was definitely me at 18 in college.
Oh, it's me at 40.
Yeah. How do I do that again?
That's definitely not the shocker. Okay.
We'll get into many more shockers, Brandon. You just barely met me.
I'm so excited.
Oh, this is gonna be a good time, y'all. I'm really excited about it. Let's see here. Oh, I don't want to share it to a group. Come on, Facebook. Do what I want.
I think Megan's watching. I've been told that she may have just taken an edible, so she might get more out of this than I'm getting out of this.
This might be really fun. This might be really, really fun.
I think this is going to be really fun.
Are you sharing all the things?
I did.
Brandon? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it right now because copy link. There we go.
There we go.
Finally. Jeepers. This is what we do. In the beginning of the show, we try to figure out how to put links in places.
Well, if
I want to share this with people that are watching, where should I send them to, Erika?
I'm making a post right now if you want to share it.
Bonus. I will totally share your post.
There's a direct link in the private chat for you.
Oh, bonus. Thank
you. Yay.
Coffee.
Done. Woohoo. So everybody share everything as much as you can.
Yeah.
All the folks who are out there already with us, share the live stream. I just shared it. Brandon just shared it. Angie just shared it. Woohoo! So we're here. We are here.
So something like Monday of last week, I was reading a terrible rag, the Daily Mail, that I want to do on Mondays. And of course,
why you subject yourself?
Crazy person was talking about a coregasm, and I was like, orgasm off of ab exercises. Okay, well, who doesn't want that?
I mean, fair.
Is that why everyone does Soul Cycle? I mean,
perhaps. I've never been to Soul Cycle. I thought Soul Cycle was sort of kind of the way people talk about it. It seems religious for some folks.
It is religious, very.
But yeah, we weren't together last week because I went to a Black Lives Matter protest. I felt like that was the most important thing for me to do at that point. And I know Brandon had just shared not that long ago, like influencers doing shit like blackface, even now, like in tribute. I'm just like, come on, people. Come on. Stop it.
Just cluelessness.
No end to the frustration.
Yes. And so, but I did post those live videos if folks want to see them. If you are looking for places to donate, please do a quick Google search. It is very easy to find. I can actually I'll put some links in the comments for folks to find places to donate. If protesting isn't your jam, that's cool. Like, that's not for everybody, but there are lots of things for people to get out there and do and contribute to your community. So Do it.
Deal.
But I want to get to like pelvic floor health and stuff that you are really, really good at. I actually even send people to you virtually, even from across, because you're in Texas, right?
Uh-oh. We have a freezing.
we have a freezing.
She's at least she froze in a good way. That's a really good freeze.
That's a really good pose.
If you were going to freeze, that is how you should freeze. It's a good smile.
It is. Let me see if I can.
Although there's a little. She looks just a little uncomfortable, almost like she just. Yep, we got spinning. Well, she'll dial back in a minute.
Yes, I'm gonna remove it from the stream for a second so that she can get reloaded up. But
so we were talking pelvic floor.
Yes, we were talking pelvic floor. We're talking about pelvic floor muscles, and how essentially like, oh, good, Angie's figuring it out. So essentially, like, Dr. Angie Stoehr, there you are, is an expert in all things, not only just like pain issues, but like sexual health in general. And that's not, I mean, you know this already about your field, so you know that I'm not being overly critical. OBGYNs, even though a lot of them deal with how we make babies, don't have a lot of sexual health education. You want to talk about that?
So true. There's societies for this. And honestly, I would say a lot of pelvic floor physical therapists know a hell of a lot more about the pelvic floor than OBGYNs do, even though it's kind of our world. Urologists too. Urologists deal with male pelvic floor, and they just don't get trained in this stuff very much. The pelvic floor is actually a really important baseline of muscles. I always describe it to my patients as like this nice little hammock that sits as part of where this comes from, because it's the hammock analogy. We were talking about that earlier. So it's a hammock at the bottom of your pelvic region that when you stand up actually kind of tilts towards your back, but when you're sitting down, you sit flat on it. And it's got 3 holes in it in women. Those holes you pee from, you poo from, and you have sex with. So that's basically the entire muscle set down there. Your pelvic floor is in control of stuff like holding pee, holding poo, being able to contract in the desired way when one wants to orgasm, to be able to tighten the vagina during intercourse or relax it so something else can go in there, getting tampons in, etc. Yeah.
I'm doing handy little mimes for you over here, trying to do it on the camera. But we're sitting on it right now.
What are you doing? What are you miming this for while we're talking about the pelvic floor?
Because tightening, contracting, and relaxing, contracting, and relaxing.
If you want to fit something else in there, I mean,
hands, watermelons, cantaloupe.
I'm sure.
Don't put glass bottles in it; that gets messy.
Yes, and potentially painful.
I'm getting a text message about Kegels.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to talk about that for sure.
We will talk about Kegels. Indeed, it's part of the pelvic floor.
So let's talk about maybe that it's important across the gender spectrum.
Across the Tinder spectrum?
Oh yeah, that too. But I mean, gender spectrum.
I thought you said Tinder, and I was like, well,
the Tinder spectrum. You did say Tinder spectrum.
Across the gender spectrum, and like the pelvic floor in general, in males versus females.
Yes.
Okay, so I thought you said Tinder, and I was like, well, we can go there if you want to. So
I always do my Kegels when I'm swiping.
You should do your Kegels while you're doing them.
Pulse.
I like him a lot. So as far as born female and born male, yes, everybody's got a pelvic floor. Men have a large organ that goes through their pelvic floor, and I'm not a male pelvic floor specialist, so I don't know how all the details work there, but the penis is actually wrapped in part of the pelvic floor. And basically the penis extends not just from the outside of your body to the end of the penile head, but it actually starts back kind of where your prostate is, which is actually kind of up inside. If you've ever had a prostate exam, you probably have some idea where your prostate lies. It's on the, one finger, very gloved. It's on the top side of your rectum, or the anterior portion of your rectum, and it sits kind of right on top of the very back end of your penis. And so the penis actually runs all the way through the pelvic floor to get to the exterior, which is why doing stuff like perineal massage during sex for men, which is that little area in between the rectum and where the penis exits, or in females between the rectum and the vagina, that little area there in men is very sensitive, and doing penile massage of the perineum can be very pleasurable in men, so they tell me.
Hey, you know what? Your butt and that entire area has no orientation, and it feels good when you touch it. So it's because of, like you said, all of those nerve endings from essentially all the way from the back all the way to the front. That's, I mean, this is something that I've talked to my clients about all the time. I know, Angie, you do too, that pleasure is there are lots and lots of areas other than the head of the penis and the very tip of the clitoris that it can be really pleasurable for people to be touching and like contracting and playing with lots of fun types of pressure.
For sure. Absolutely. And the clitoris is a much bigger organ than most people realize too. I know you know this, Erika. Brandon may not know. Did you know? I should have brought my clitoris.
I just ordered one. A friend of mine is making them, and I'm going to feature it on the show when I get it.
Better.
It's gonna come.
Wait a minute. You mail order clitoris?
Yes.
Yes. You can order a 3D printed clitoris.
Yes.
So the clitoris actually looks like a little like animal. It's kind of like, this is the top of it that you're used to seeing. And then these two little pieces like go down into the pelvic, like the labia minora. Yeah, you need to throw a picture up there, Erika.
I'm gonna draw
it and hold it up. Yeah. So it's kind of looks like a little like creature.
It does look like a little creature.
And it's got two little bulbs that sit down in the perineal area, but kind of like above, and technically it's part of the vestibule, which is the entryway of the vagina, or that little area in between where your vagina is and where you pee from.
I'm gonna draw larger holes and smaller holes. This is a very crude drawing for the people out there. It does look like a little creature, and then there are other branches depending on the kind of your own personal body. Because guess what? Everybody is not exactly the same. And bodies can have different sizes of clitoral organs and or penises and or nerve endings. So yes, this is a fun little drawing, but you can see that it is just much larger than that head part that you see on the outside of a vulva, right? So I mean, don't worry, I'm gonna have a 3D model soon, and I'll be making Brandon shake his head.
I left it at the office. I didn't even think about it. I also have an entire vulva.
He's questioning his life right now.
Have you seen my vulva too, Erika? I have an entire vulva made out of velvet. I call her velvet purple. You can order those too.
Are you talking about the vulva puppet?
Yes. Do you have a vulva puppet?
I'm going to order one.
You need to.
I need one.
Worth every penny. I use it in my office all the time.
Okay. Enough about using our clitorises in our offices.
All right, Brandon. I need to get a 3D printed penis too someday.
I mean, you know, if you got one, get the other.
Well, they're a little easier to order online, actually.
I know.
I mean, you know, pleasure chest.
Hey, that is a sex positive sex store. Good choice.
Amen.
So I'm just so excited and tickled that you're here, because you're just a joy always. But let's talk a little bit about how do people start to understand maybe their anatomy when they know.
Yeah.
When we know, not they, when we know that their education is probably more than likely garbage when it comes to sex. Like, do you have like websites you like to refer folks to, or anything like that can give them maybe some images? They can look
too bad.
Not those. Performance. Those are performance.
There's very big difference there.
I don't know. Some would argue it's not performance.
Honestly, I tend to like bring up actual like medical images when I so like Netter's anatomy, I'm like pulling that kind of stuff up so I can show people where stuff is in relationship to each other. But I've got a lot of like 3D type model stuff in my office. It makes it a little easier, honestly, to show people where stuff is and where their anatomy is and what it's supposed to look like.
And,
so
and they can, without shame,
medical.
They can, like, without shame, turn them over and look inside and ask questions about the different parts without kind of looking at maybe even a flat image online by themselves and going, oh, that's a lot. I don't know what I'm looking at.
So are we
One of the
really
reasons I
at
have
a
the puppet.
point where a large number of adults don't understand their anatomy?
Yeah. Yes.
Did you know that the clitoris has like 4 legs on it and a head?
I mean, I didn't know it had legs on it, but I've found the head a few times. I've managed to find the head.
Good for you.
Like, I mean,
hopefully
not at the bottom; it's at the top.
It's at the top. Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily know that their penis goes all the way back to the rectum.
Yeah. Brandon's just gonna get a pad of paper and pen out here in a minute.
Right.
No, I'm getting my mirror. Are you kidding? I'm going on a deep dive.
A lot of people don't realize that the bladder is involved in the erogenous zones. Did you know your bladder is involved with arousal?
Yeah, I did, because if it's full, I can't get aroused.
Well, if it's too full, but if it's completely empty, sometimes that hurts too. And in women, it's actually sometimes better to have your bladder a little full when you have sex.
Because of the pressure that it creates from the other side.
It pushes down on the top side of the vagina, which actually pushes some of the erogenous zones on the anterior vagina. Some people debate the G spot. It actually pushes the G spot closer to where the penis is able to touch it.
So there we go. Is there a G spot?
Well, I go, okay, that's a loaded question, Brandon. If you're looking at the medical literature, about 50% of us say yes and 50% say no. Everybody's got a different opinion. Honestly, my opinion is it's a hypersensitive region in the mid-urethra that kind of wraps around where the back side of the clitoris sits. Because the clitoris sits right over your mid-urethra, and like the 2 of those 4 legs kind of sit right on either side of it. And so my thought is that it's not necessarily an actual spot of bundle of nerves like some people say, but that it's probably just a hypersensitive spot right where the clitoral crust kind of forks.
I mean, most of the time I felt it.
But that's
there's an actual like tactile spot you can feel.
Yes, but
so I mean, I do believe it's there, but
it's not this like magic spot that especially, like, even Cosmo just came out with a big old article apologizing for like
for everything.
Well, there, yeah.
For the loofahs,
essentially
for all of the loofah articles, did they apologize for the loofah?
For putting out articles after articles after articles for people to find the G spot, and people with vulvas and vaginas have been like searching and feeling really broken because they haven't found this magical spot, when in reality it's much closer to what Dr. Angie says, right? Like it is I agree with Dr. Angie, having looked at many medical models of what this looks like, and it does appear to be like part of the clitoris and part of the urethra, that part of the nerve endings that were already in existence. And so many people have been referring to this as the clitoral organ. Yeah. So just essentially looking at the entire space as part of the clitoris, which essentially,
as far as that like tactile thing that you're talking about, where the crust splits, there's a little bit of a ridge there. And you know, my thought is, you know, they say it's supposed to feel a little bit like stiffer there, or a little bit more
like
kind
a target.
Like,
it feels there's a feeling of basically ridges. It
like a
feels
ridge,
like a target right at this spot. Yeah.
I think that's where the crust actually is splitting. And that would also explain why in different women it's in different locations, and why some women don't seem to have one, because their crust may split a little too high. I mean, that's just my guess.
Just like,
that's an educated one, but it's a guess.
That's the thing that I think it is more than likely the idea of the G spot is also similar to the misunderstanding about what the hymen is. And especially since that some people can have hymens and some people don't at all. And the shape and size of a hymen can change based on the person and their anatomy. So like, I think that this goes a lot right along with it, that not every body, not every physical body is exactly the same.
For sure. Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
So all of this getting into orgasms, though, as we're talking about this,
Yes.
talking about that kind of like crust area, one of the things that's a bonus is when you clench the vagina and kind of cinch it up a little bit, it pushes and kind of like basically squeezes the clitoral crust down in there. And that's part of what feels so good. And if we're talking about coregasms that you're wanting to get into, you're asking my theory, like, is this possible? And as I thought about it, I was like, you know what? Physiologically, that's quite possible.
So let's get into the idea of what this is. So this came from this article.
Just terrible rag.
Terrible. But also, like, the article, like the entire thing itself is just a mess. But like the idea, it says, have you experienced a coregasm? In quotation marks. Women reveal they climax just from doing ab exercises, and some insist it's better than sex with a man. I was like, oh, how? Why? Why do we need to do this?
75% of men is probably terrible anyway.
Question is, what percentage are you in, Brandon?
It's more of a setup.
I don't want to know.
Well, then if you also throw in the statistics that like so few women actually orgasm with penile penetration at baseline, I mean, you're setting people up for some serious disappointment there.
Absolutely.
Or finding out that you were a disappointment later.
True.
Well, now that we're broken up for 10 years, I just want you to know, I never came.
Orgasmed with you.
Well, how am I supposed to do? You have a communicational problem.
You waited 10 years? How is that?
10 years? I hope your husband's happy. You're mean.
That's something I get in my office a lot, though. Women are like, we get to the end of the appointment, very end, and I've got my hand on the doorknob, and they're like, so I never orgasm with sex. I was like, well, it depends on, number one, on what your definition of sex is there, because sex can be as little as snuggling naked to as much as, fisting.
Snuggling naked to journey.
Yeah, I mean, like in my world, it can even start with, my husband doing the dishes.
Yes.
That's the point, though. Foreplay starts with dishes.
Well, dishes is one of them. Sweeping, taking care of the kids. My husband's putting our children to bed right now. That's sexy as hell.
Yes, it is.
So it depends on what your definition of sex is. But if you're talking about penile penetration, if you can't have an orgasm with penile penetration alone, congratulations, you're in the majority.
Yes.
And people are always so surprised. They're like, what? It's like, yeah, no, most of us can't.
I can't tell you how many couples, thruples I get in my office that are coming to me because they've wrapped their identity based on the success of orgasm during sex. So there's this idea that, I'm not a man if I don't make her come with my penis inside of her. Like, I'm not a come. I am.
That's exactly what they say.
You're gonna come now. Okay. Well, we're getting. Is she into that?
Thank you. This is a beautiful.
That's totally okay.
It's okay if she's into that, but otherwise, I mean, you don't need to be Rick Jackhammer. Okay, it's okay. Calm down.
Oh, see, I need that as a quote. That needs to be on a shirt somewhere. You do not need to be Rick Jackhammer.
It's your next mug.
Yes.
Yes.
Brandon's face on it with a little bubble, speech bubble. But I think that this is important that we're talking about this because I do think because of like the cultural expectations around pleasure and sex, they are just so fucked up that this ends with couples in peril because they have decided, because of all the things that they've been told, that this is what it's supposed to look like. And so we as providers have to break down a lot of that misinformation.
Absolutely. I probably spend more time in consultation with that type of issue than I should. It should be out there everywhere. Yes. Women don't orgasm with penises. No offense. We love the man, but not necessarily finding that a penis alone will do it for most of us.
Yes.
What it is.
Not through penis alone.
Not through penis alone. I need your dishes.
Why are these not going on in the comments and then going right up on the screen? Not
people are too enthralled. Okay, what kind of exercises should someone do to start getting towards this this coregasm.
Beautiful.
Okay, so
Beautiful
let's
segue.
get back to the coregasms. Okay,
Yeah.
so well, the technical definition of an orgasm is also a little bit. It's kind of like porn. You know it when you see it. When you orgasm, you know it when you have one. It's actually technically a brain experience. It all happens up here, except there's physiological things that happen down there. And there's certainly people who have like what we call anhedonic orgasms, where they're not into it, but they orgasm anyways, and it's just kind of meh. Most people don't necessarily consider that an orgasm.
And does that come with having a sarcastic vagina?
Yes, it does.
Seriously, when there's one labia just a little bit longer, it looks like it's sticking its tongue out at you, like.
But it is possible to orgasm just from like, sometimes wiggling in your chair at work or whatever. You're like, wait a second, that's kind of arousing. And you orgasm, you're like, what was that? It's not like you were into it. You weren't like trying to have sex with your chair. And then there's also this like extreme part of this. It's something called PGAD, which is, they keep changing the names, but persistent genital arousal disorder, where sometimes people will have thousands of orgasms a day, and it's horrifying. Like completely upends their life. It's painful. They can't go out in public. They're embarrassed. So I mean, like, there's kind of.
I think I have a neighbor with that issue. I keep hearing it echoing through the alleyway over here.
Usually, they're not actually pleasured by them. They're scared by them. So yeah, it's not that. That may be an actual legit. I wanted it orgasm. So
I can only imagine like how sensitive a person like physically would be after having that many orgasms, because the nerve endings are, I would imagine, firing all the time.
Yeah, they're constantly firing. And there's actually some interesting literature going on right now about looking to figure out where the problem is. And it can be everywhere from right at the tip end of the clitoris all the way up through spinal issues, spinal compression from different types of tumors, and then also all the way up to the brain. It can be a central issue where, the area of the brain that's responsible, or the areas of the brain that are responsible for orgasm, are firing when they shouldn't be. It's very interesting. But anyways, so like physiologically down in the vagina, not tacking on the men this time because I'm definitely a GYN. So yeah, in the vulva, some of the things that typically are involved with orgasm are clitoral stimulation, or stimulation of the nerve that supplies the clitoris, which is the pudendal nerve. And that runs through the pelvic floor muscles out into the skin area, just as it kind of branches into the clitoral nerve. And then there typically is some amount of psychological arousal associated with most orgasms. And that can be everything from having a really beautiful looking naked person in front of you to using a toy to just reading an erotic piece of literature. Some type of psychological arousal, some type of twinkling of the pudendal nerve. And then the pelvic floor muscles in response with orgasm typically have this, here's where it comes, this reflexive rhythmic contraction of the muscle. And that's typically what people feel as the orgasm. It's this, pleasurable release of tension with reflexive contraction of the pelvic floor. And my thought about the coregasm is that when you're doing a really legit hard work on your core muscles, you can't just work your core, because if you did, other stuff would get out of place. It would hurt your back if you didn't contract your back muscles in response. It's kind of like, when you contract your bicep, your tricep has to relax at the same time. But in order to do this, you also have to tighten up the muscles in your shoulder and in your upper back, because if you just flex this, it can pull other things out of joint. So in order to kind of maintain posture without hurting anything, you have to stabilize with your other muscles. And those muscles that you would use to stabilize your core are your lower back, your buttocks, and guess what? Your pelvic floor.
Woo!
And if you are stabilizing your pelvic floor, you're stabilizing your core with your pelvic floor, you're probably clenching that pelvic floor pretty tight. And that pudendal nerve, it's going to get some love with that.
Little massage. Just a
little massage, especially with core exercises, because typically core exercises are rhythmic exercises. Unless you're just doing like, a plank, a lot of types of core exercises are rhythmic. You do sit-ups, or you do side crunches, or you do some type of like leg lift. Those typically are rhythmic exercises. And if you're rhythmically contracting your pelvic floor to stabilize that and, loving on your pudendal nerve a little bit, you're probably going to experience something in, somewhat arousing if you have that bent toward it, or you notice it, or you're looking for it. And I would think people that have had a coregasm before accidentally are probably looking for it after that, because apparently they're quite pleasurable.
I just I really want to create some sort of image of maybe Dr. Angie saying twinkling pudendal nerve. Like that's just the best thing I've heard in a while.
We'll put that on my mug.
Like fairy with a little wand, like twinkling the pudendal nerve.
Sprinkling magic dust on it.
Yes.
With like a little clitoral hat.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And the puppet.
It'll actually, instead of a hat, we can make it like a tiara with a clitoris at the top of it.
Yes.
Yes.
And two little things coming down.
I'm hearing my next cosplay. Love it.
No.
I love it.
What are you? I'm Miss Pudendal. The fairy that twinkles the pudendal. Come to my back room.
I was actually thinking about the exercises that might actually do this, and I was trying to picture like what they might be, and then I thought, I'm like, oh, like maybe some of these Pilates moves would be like the 100. Like I'm thinking about like when you raise your feet, and you're contracting your entire core and your pelvic floor, and then you're moving your arms, or even like some like leg lifts like you were talking about. I was trying to picture like what these ones might be. And I'm just like, well what?
She claims in the article that she did it. One of the women who contacted her did it on an ab roller.
Oh, like one of those like ones where you're like, meh.
You're holding it and you roll it out in front of you.
No. I think she means the actual like the roll that you stick on your side and you roll along it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Really?
I think
it would make more sense to like hold one that you roll in front of you to like contract your core as you're going back and forth. I don't know. Can we do an ab roller?
It says honestly, I had an ab roller orgasm during the 100 challenge, and TBH, what does that mean to the young people again?
To be honest.
To be honest, thank you.
Yeah.
It was one of the
all right, Brandon, I'm Googling ab roller workout, and all of them are the little like wheel that go out in front of you.
I think she's using the wrong terminology. I think what she's talking about is, which is much more popular now, is the actual roll.
Like a foam roller.
Foam roller. I have a feeling she's talking about a foam roller, because I can definitely see using a foam roller in certain ways.
There's a picture of her here.
Definitely.
Is there a picture of her in there?
It's the wheel with the two things on the Yep. There's a picture of her. Yep. Holding it.
Because the wheel would definitely require, as you're leaning further forward, you're going to be rocking your pelvis.
Yeah. Well,
in order to kind of get your butt up in the air, and then you have to straighten it out. You're going to be rocking your pelvis from anterior to posterior, back and forth and back and forth. That would most definitely require pretty impressive contractions of your pelvic floor to not leak urine.
Oh,
or to toot, for that matter. These are like exercises.
When I've used an ab roller, I definitely toot, and I definitely am trying really hard not to fall in my face. So I'm really not focused on my pelvic floor.
You toot with an ab roller?
Yeah, a lot of people toot. People toot with ab exercises and with like the leg lifts. One of my friends calls it the fart machine.
I was gonna say, you do yoga, Brandon. I feel like you understand this.
I don't toot. I loosen things up. I take a 5-minute break. I come back and I restart again. And it usually happens at the beginning when I'm doing my Warrior 1 series. Yes.
Got it. Okay. You're just more polite.
I mean,
the rest of us just fart.
I mean, I just know that if I'm going to be in class, that I have to have my coffee and have loosened things up and cleaned myself out to be in class.
Oh, got it. So it's pre-prep.
I prep, because otherwise, that'll get messy.
We're all involved.
Like, gotta go. Later.
So when it comes to like people that when they're looking for providers that they should be talking about, I mean, you and I get enough phone calls, Angie. But who should people ask about their pelvic floor? Like, who would be a best bet?
It depends on what they're asking about specifically. If they're having trouble with like leaking urine, a urologist or a urogynecologist would be a good spot to start, or a gynecologist, a regular variety gynae. If we're talking more about like having trouble orgasming or orgasming when you don't want to, probably a gynecologist that specializes in pelvic pain or pelvic disorders or sexual dysfunction would be a good place to start, or a sex therapist. Another great place to start for pretty much anything related to pelvic floor would be a pelvic floor physical therapist. You're going to get good things out of that. Pelvic floor PTs, pretty much 100% of my patients are referred to one. Not all of them go like they should, but pelvic floor physical therapy is way, way important when you're dealing with anything related to pelvic floor stuff. If it's something going wrong in your pelvic region, pelvic floor physical therapy should be involved, period.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeez,
things you can end up with stuff not staying
where it should be. Yes.
Where it should.
Things falling out.
things coming out, and not in a kinky way.
Yeah. I've only seen images. I'm sure, Angie, you've seen that. You've seen prolapses and all that kind of stuff in person.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that can't be okay. So I'm working on a documentary, and interviewed the guy about. I'm working on a documentary about Just for Fans, which is a site for models to put up their own material.
Gotcha.
Similar to the other sites. But I talked to the guy who's the most popular for doing fisting videos, and he also does prolapse. And it's like, I'm sorry, at the back of my head, I'm just like, that can't be long-term. Prolapsing can't be long-term healthy.
No, it's typically not long-term. If they're doing prolapsing intentionally, depending on exactly how they're doing it, eventually it'll damage something. And then stuff is falling out when they don't want it to be falling out. So
that is why one of my favorite, my old school, the folks who listen to my show know that I loved Sue Johansson's show, Talk Sex with Sue on the Oxygen Network back in the day. And she used to talk about like any of the anal play. It's great, but also gently bently, because there are nerve endings, there are membranes, and there are things you can really damage.
Membranes.
If you are not careful. And you absolutely must have all consent to be able to do those things, because if the butt does not want to relax, you're not doing anything.
No, and I mean, most people unfortunately get exposed to it through pornography, and they do not know the lengths at which most of the performers go through before they do one of those scenes.
Yes.
I mean, 5 hours of stretching.
Oh yeah.
And knowing to relieve their bowels in advance, like you were talking about in a minute. A minute ago. Yeah,
exactly. Pre-prep.
Yeah, serious prep.
Yeah, prepped like an entire bottle of lube.
Yeah, and 30 minutes of straight meditation prior.
Oh yeah, and then that was, of course, the day they decided not to shoot Stoehr's anal scene. She was not happy when she came home.
Oh yeah. I imagine so.
I had a butt plug in for 6 hours. Okay, honey. Let's calm down. Stop clenching.
There's so many. I relaxed it all day. I need to clench it. Damn it.
The doctor told me.
I was laying on the floor with my ass in the air with a butt plug in for 6 hours.
I would imagine. I hope many of these, like, they probably don't, but I have hope that many of these like porn producing, like moving producing places would employ a pelvic floor person or pelvic floor PT so that they could improve their performers' health. But these are just dreams I have.
You seem to think that these people are more than just agencies collecting a commission.
And the problem is the long term is what they're looking for pelvic floor health, and a lot of these are not long term performers, unfortunately.
No, not at all. Like average length, 6 to 12
I was about
months.
to say, you age out really fast.
Real fast.
So
Real fast.
when for funsies, when it comes to
I was wondering
Let's
what
see the
funsies was going to
velvet
be.
vulva.
I wish I brought it home with me. I didn't.
Angie would have shown off. I cannot
love
wait.
my
I cannot wait
photo.
till mine comes in. But when it comes to like some of your favorite, like maybe do you have any favorite, not necessarily medical resources, but for fun resources, do you have any fun meme places that you like to go for sex ed memes or anything like that?
I'm so boring.
I know.
I don't keep up with memes. Oh no.
She's not on Instagram.
I have an Instagram, but I'm not on it. My marketing people are.
See, this is what I'm trying to move to because I want to not.
At least we know there's still going to be jobs for high schoolers.
Yeah, that's right. Thank God for that. People who know how to use the internet. I'm on social media, but a lot of it's not necessarily me. I mean, the only one I kind of sort of know how to do is Facebook because I started from the ground up, and that was after I graduated from residency. So I mean, it tells you how old I am. I mean, I had MySpace back in the day.
Same.
Oh yeah.
The top 8 meant something.
Yes, it did.
Oh yeah.
Toiled over who was in the top 8.
That's right. I mean, like, those were agonizing decisions.
Toiled, like thought about very, very hard.
Very hard. You didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
And or you did because then you would change it. Like,
just
I'm going to teach you.
That's right. It's kind of like unfriending people or stopping following people on Facebook, except that like everybody's doing that with everyone now. Yeah, I haven't really like been on Facebook.
I took it off my phone.
Yeah, I did too. I was starting to get pissed off with people that I used to like who were then posting things that were hateful, and I was like, no, I can't. If I want to have any friends left, I need to just shut my mouth and turn it off.
Yep.
I don't post political. Whenever someone joins, whenever someone becomes friends with me, I write them right away and I say, listen, this page, I don't post political, period. So
I don't do political either, but it took about a half a second of me posting that there was only 2 medications for women who are having sexual dysfunction problems, and there's like 400 for men, for someone to start mansplaining me. And I was like, seriously?
You're like, try again.
Try again. I mean, there's got to be more than 2. There's Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, there's Oban. Most of the scotches I know are great medications for sexual dysfunction.
Well, I will tell you, I have a lot of patients that show up in my office and they're like, my last gynecologist told me to just drink a glass of wine. And I'm like, next time you tell that gynecologist to shove that glass of wine up his ass.
That's right.
Of course, as a guy, that's terrible. That's terrible because that right there is going to dry you out. There's no way that's going to help lubrication.
It has nothing to do with lubrication. They're thinking it's just going to make them feel like more relaxed. I'm like, if you have to drink a glass of wine to have sex, there is something physiologically or psychologically wrong. It needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. My personal opinion, in my humble opinion.
And how many of our research studies that backs that up too.
Yeah. If you want to have a glass of wine, more power to you, but you should not need it.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean that something that you just said, I think is really important, that the difference between what is available for those with vulvas and the things that are available for those with penises it is a completely different. I'm actually I'm in conversation with the folks over at the Male Contraception Society. They are working on all the research around that, so I'm going to be hopefully interviewing them soon. But like just the sheer amount of availability for any of these medications or birth control for anybody is really, really frustrating, and especially during the time of COVID, super not always available.
And we've got like oodles and hundreds of papers of literature supporting something, and the FDA still won't approve it as a treatment for women, like testosterone. I mean, I could produce to you a stack this thick of using testosterone in women, both pre and postmenopausal, for libido issues, and it's not FDA approved to use in women.
But they will approve a medication that actually causes more harm than good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Viagra? Are you talking about Viagra?
No. What
Okay.
what is it? What was that damn medication called, Angie? That medication they approved, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, that was incredibly controversial, that
Which one?
actually looking at
There's more than a couple of those that have been approved for women.
Yeah.
The only two that are currently on the market are flibanserin and
flibanserin.
Well, flibanserin is actually, it's not as controversial now as it used to be. I actually love flibanserin.
Oh, maybe I'm not thinking of that.
All the time. Yeah, no, flibanserin, it was initially somewhat controversial because people were calling it like the female Viagra, but it didn't work that way at all. And so people were really like worried about it. And they were concerned about like side effects and all that stuff. And the original company that put it out wound up selling it off to another company that completely mishandled the marketing. And then they eventually brought it back. So yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I actually prescribe
Not like most women have ever felt mishandled before.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. But no, I actually prescribe that particular medication all the time.
They gotta name it. But what does it do?
Well, there is a different name. Flibanserin is the generic name. Am I allowed to use trade names on here? I'm not getting in trouble for that, right?
No.
Addie. It's Addie. ADDYI. Yeah, Addie's actually a really interesting medication. So when they were originally developing it, they were actually developing it as an antidepressant.
Yes.
And as they started doing the trials, they discovered that it did indeed work for depression, but it also made all the women really horny. And that was the first time in history that any antidepressant didn't have a bad effect on libido. And so at that time, there were no libido medications for women. And so they decided they were going to market it as a libido med. And they successfully did so.
Be careful when using flibanserin. You may experience wet mouth, wet vulva, hot, warm, fuzzy feelings.
Your husband may really like this medication.
I am curious though. Do you think that this is
might like the medication?
Actual like? I imagine, like, of course, like this is the first time that we haven't seen like a negative sexual side effect, but like, is it because that we're dealing with maybe some high functioning people who had depression? And
it's entirely possible that it's helping with the depression, but they've actually tested it in patients with pre-existing depression, and it doesn't seem to change that much how it works. It's only got about a 60 to 70% response rate. So not everybody responds to it, which is pretty classic for like antidepressants as well. But yeah, no, the people that use it, it really does work quite well. I think the original kind of like big controversy was actually alcohol related. It's kind of crazy. They, the original market, like box market warning was that you couldn't drink alcohol at all while taking Addie. And of course that made it a little less desirable for some people, although a lot of women were still willing to take it and just, promise. We had to like write down that they wouldn't take alcohol. I had to sign it. They had to sign it. I had to be specially like certified to prescribe the medication for up until about a year ago. And then they finally got that taken away. And it's partially because the original studies that they did with it, they couldn't even find enough women to drink the amount of alcohol that was required for the study. They had to drink like, I want to say it was like an entire bottle of wine in like 20 minutes and then take the medication. And
I've got a couple of Spain classes for you.
So the side effects that they were having were, well, that's the thing. That's what they were worried about, because when they made people do that, they like passed out.
Yeah.
They had hypotensive episodes and were, would lose consciousness. And so you couldn't drink alcohol with it. But they actually just, I want to say maybe it's about 6 months ago or so, completely removed that specific requirement with the alcohol. And now you just can't have alcohol within a certain time limit of it. I want to say it's 3 hours. I always have to look it up when I'm talking to patients because I can never remember. But
they should have run that trial here in New York. If they had done that in Manhattan, I mean, please, a bottle of wine after work? Are you kidding me? 20 minutes? I mean,
that's a lot of wine, really
fast. That's a Sunday.
It's a lot of wine. And then to take a medication with it. I mean, like all of the antidepressants say not to chug it with your whiskey. You're not supposed to be taking those medications with hard alcohol anyways.
A bottle of wine in 20 minutes and then take a pill that might make you horny. That sounds like brunch in Manhattan.
It may be brunch in Manhattan. It is not in Dallas.
That's definitely the all-you-can-drink brunch in Manhattan.
I'm going to have to look up the actual time requirement there, or else like people from Addie are going to be calling me and be like, you gave incorrect information. Like,
sorry.
That was close.
Paid sponsorship, please.
Yeah, pharmaceutical paid sponsorship.
We'll get it right if you can.
I'll try it out. I'll see how what it does.
I've actually honestly, like, to be completely forthcoming, I've done some training for their new recruits before that they have been paid for.
Oh, so, fantastic.
I will tell you that. Yeah, they asked me to come one time. Well, online, of course, not in person. This was about 4 months ago. It was right when COVID started. Right. And they asked if I would help train some of their new recruits that were going to be their new reps about how I talk to patients about sexual stuff. So yeah, I have been paid by them once. So
if they ever want to pay me, you tell them I'm available.
Happy to, absolutely. But yeah, no, I've been prescribing Abby for years, and I actually really find that a lot of the patients that respond to it do quite well with it.
I am glad to hear that, because that was some of the things that that was one of my biggest concerns reading some of the literature is like, okay, so how do we manage the risk taking this medication, and how do we be as forthcoming as we can be with our clients that may or may not take it. Just like with Viagra, I mean, there are side effects that we have found over the years now that has been prescribed that that people have to be very aware of. But just I am curious, like how is the availability versus Viagra? Is it fairly easy to get, Abby?
It depends on whether you have a fairly padded pocketbook or not.
Fair.
Yeah, Viagra is pretty cheap. I mean, you can walk into the ER at the VA hospital and get it for free.
We have it at the Pakistani deli down the street.
Yeah, and it's like $3 for a bottle. I mean, like it's super cheap. Addy is going to cost you typically about $100, I think, out of pocket a month. Yeah, it's pretty tight. But if it works for depression and anxiety and makes your libido better, it's probably worth it to a good chunk of people.
I mean, fair, especially if you do have a good insurance that'll cover a good chunk of it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, though, to your point there a minute ago, it's actually really important, like with prescribing these medications, to know that there's not something else causing the problem. Because I mean, if your husband's just a douchebag, I'm not going to be able to fix that with a medication,
right?
Yeah, you will. Klonopin.
It depends. Are you giving it to him or
yes, giving it to him.
Okay, yeah.
This is going to make you so horny. You take this, sir.
You take this medication. You'll go pass out.
He got hard, but he just laid there for once. I mean, it was great. He was stiff as a board.
Stiff as a board until the police came.
He was great. No one's calling the police. I'm not calling the police, please.
He never did go to work. They didn't mess him.
He was wonderful. I tied him up. It was great. Everything I'd always been fantasizing about.
See? This is how we
wrapped him up in an apron.
The only thing you were missing was the dishes.
That's right.
I wasn't doing those either. Damn it.
And so you're saying something that is really important. That I mean, the big pieces of sexuality are in the brain. Oh, yeah. The arousal we feel, a lot of that is in the brain. Being able to, even if like you have a medication, one of the urologists that that refers to me says often, Erica, can give them as many boners as they want, but I can't change desire. Yeah. And that is absolutely the case. So how do people find you in the world?
Yeah.
How do they find me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm everywhere.
Haunting.
So I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. My group that I work with is Nurture Women's Health, and we are in Frisco. So if you're looking for me, it's nurturewomenshealth.com.
Womenshealth.com.
Yes. Or if you just Google my name that's written down there underneath me, you should be able to find me. I think I'm the only Angie Stoehr out there that's a doctor. So yeah,
right.
Nurture Women's Health. Yeah, you did. Nurturewomenshealth.com. Yeah. So you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. If you look around a little bit, you may find the Stoehr Center, which is kind of the like side job that I sell my books through. So that's you can look that up too. And I do have a Facebook for that, but I'm going to be honest, I don't post on it very much.
That's what you have the interns for.
That's right. I'm going to pay high school graduates to post for me. They love it. I'm like, just post a bunch about orgasms. You're good.
Tomorrow you find out you have a TikTok about orgasms.
I'm not on
You
TikTok
should.
yet, but I could be.
You really should, honestly, because I mean, there's
the new
a
thing, right?
huge gap of information, and people are using TikTok to do education stuff.
I just started messing with my profile today, and I asked my teenager, I was like, "How do I use this?"
Yeah,
I don't know what to do.
I haven't figured out Twitter yet, guys. I have a Twitter.
You remember cheerleaders in high school? It's the same thing. You're just yelling in a gymnasium. So just yell.
Okay.
Yell. That's what Twitter is. It's just yelling in a gymnasium with everyone else yelling.
Okay. I follow some people, but like I can't even figure out like where's the beginning of my feed. It always just throws me somewhere in the middle, and I don't know what I read last
Where does
time.
it
Yeah,
end?
like, there is no end. It's a circle.
No, it doesn't end.
So, anyways, yeah, I'll get to TikTok eventually after I figure out Twitter and Instagram.
I just want to pay somebody else to do it. I don't want to.
That's what I do. I have those. I just don't do them myself. As other people post for me.
Yes, because reasons. That's enough.
I'm too busy thinking about doctor stuff and taking care of 2 little kids and making my husband happy after he did dishes.
That's right. That's right.
Like I said, he's putting the kids to bed right now. Like we're getting it on.
Hey, all right.
Let's get it on.
We always joke around, like he actually ran out and grabbed some groceries the other day for me, and I was like, "I'll pay you later." And he's like, "Oh, I know you will."
Dang.
That's right.
Great brain chemical.
Poor people who know me from high school are like, I didn't know this much about your sex life. That's kind of an open book.
I feel like when you work in any kind of the field of sexuality, the people around you just know that they're either in or they're out, and they're going to know all the things, and we're going to ask them questions about all the things.
Yeah, what's really funny about it is I grew up really, really conservative. And so like a lot of my people from high school and like younger, like college, etc. They all listen to it and watch on it, and then they private message me because they can't actually post on it online, And so like, is that seriously a thing? And I'm on Messenger. I'm like, why won't you just post this on the feed?
Yes, same. I have same story.
My pastor
because Bishop O'Shaughnessy follows me, and Sister Mega still likes to slap wrists. So
that's right. I'm afraid
she's a lesbian, and everyone knows it.
Lightning bolts are going to come from heaven and hit you. Yeah.
They do. That
I
happens.
still go to church, and by people at my church, they know what I do for a living, and they're kind of just okay with that.
Yes.
You know, they're sitting behind you. They're like, is she going to be sweating during the sermon today?
No, they're sweating during the sermon, and then they're PMing us afterwards.
That's
because
right.
we're cool and we're content. We're like, I'm here. I'm good.
So you're telling me I got to go back to church now? Okay. Brandon, if you're going to meet someone, go back to church.
That's right. Yeah, the first time I met my my pastor, I actually told him, I was like, so I'm a pelvic and sexual pain specialist, and I'm hoping you're okay with that, because like penises and vaginas, that it's regular word vocabulary for me. And he's like, oh, well, okay.
And see, the pastor will be PMing you. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, well, honestly, his wife is actually very forthcoming, and she and I are good friends.
See?
Yeah, you just put yourself out there. I'm like, this is what I do for a living, and I'm very, if anybody ever wants me to do the sex education for the teenagers, I'll tackle that for you.
Oh my
gosh! He wants to say the Lord's Prayer as he's coming. Can you stop him, please?
Okay, we talked about that whole mental arousal thing. You just like shot the horse. Whop. You guys know which movie that's from, right? Please tell me you know where that's from. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is one of my all-time favorites. Whop.
Matthew McConaughey. That's hilarious.
I love him. One of my favorite.
So, everybody, if you have questions for Angie, drop them in the comments, even afterwards, me or Brandon, or I will tag Angie in some of these questions if you got them. Yeah. And thank you for joining us tonight. You're a rock star.
Anytime. I am happy to jump on here whenever you would like, my dear.
Oh, we may hit you up for that, for some of these random articles that Brandon's finding.
I mean, I'm looking for themes, okay?
You are. You did a great
and
job.
people want to know. I mean, they're going to
Mhm.
post this crap on Daily Mail. Coregasms.
I am happy to tackle coregasms anytime you want. And Brandon, you can hit me up too. If you got some stuff on there, you're curious, I'm here. Open book.
All right, folks. Thanks for sticking around with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.